Provo Beast here, doing another install today. Today we're putting in this 8-inch kicker woofer into a 2003 through 2009 Toyota 4Runner. Now, this 4Runner doesn't have the factory woofer enclosure. I picked this up actually on eBay. Ordered an 8-inch woofer to replace the factory JBL woofer. I'll post this unboxing here in the description. We're also doing a 4-channel amplifier. 2 of the channels will power this woofer. 2 of the other channels will power the interior speakers. This is the GM D8604. It is 100 watt RMS at 4 ohms per channel. And when we bridge that together, it'll provide the 300 watt RMS that sub requires. So first things first, before we start installing an amplifier and sub in this 4Runner, we're going to go ahead and run wiring to the rear of the vehicle. Now this subwoofer enclosure actually sits behind the passenger very rear panel, so it's more of a factory location install. Now this wiring, we're going to run power wire from our battery here. We're going to run it through, and here is our factory grommet. She has a little thing called a nipple. You'll cut that off and that'll lead as a hole into the cabin of the vehicle, and from there we can run this power wire underneath panels to that back area. Alright, so looking down here, since we're running power wire from the battery to the rear of the vehicle, here's my fuse, and I cut that little nipple off and just fed a 4-gauge wire through there. Mount the fuse block there. And I have already started split looming just this blue wire for a little more protection. And that goes right up here. I won't put that on there until I'm totally ready. But that fits right through the factory boot, which is nice. Right there. That's where the wire feeds. Now what we're going to do with this wire is we're going to just tuck it underneath this panel. If it's easy for you, you can pop this panel off. You just get underneath with your fingers. Alright, so I've just tucked it back behind the panel, ran this power cord all the way down. It's a nice little gap, you can almost fit it through these, but I just ran it along the side. Continued along, take off this little kick panel here, just a 10mm, 2 of them, 2 bolts, and then just tucked up underneath this panel, and I just kept tucking it, and as you can see, there it is. Run along and across the top, and that's where I've ended, because I'm working my way to that point over to that panel. So I can go ahead and put everything back together over here. We're done running cabling on this side of the car. And this panel, that subwoofer, this interior box comes out, and the sub will fit back behind the panel in that area. Alright, so we got our panels all back together. Our power wire came here. I'm actually going to put in a distribution block in the event I add another amp later. But at this point, we're ready to start taking this panel apart, because our factory woofer is going to go in this area. Factory enclosure, I should say. So as we get this apart, if we have the 3rd row in this 4Runner, if you don't, your back panel will look a little bit different. We took this cover off. It just pops off, held on with clips. This little pocket pops out. You don't have to remove it, but it kind of gives you a little bit more place for leverage to pull. This little anchor mount is held on just with clips. Looks like this. Just use a screwdriver, release those clips, and it should come free. Down here we have the seatbelt bolt. It's a 14mm. We unscrewed that. We took these 5 Phillips screws out of this bottom panel here, because when we're going to pop that out, there's going to be another bolt here. Alright, so we got these bottom 2, these 2 Phillips heads out. Sorry, it's a little dark here, but I popped this panel out, just held it on with clips after I did these 2 10mm bolts for the kick panel. And you won't have this kick panel if you don't have 3rd row. Remove that 14mm bolt for the seat bolt. Just let it hang out here, pull the stripping back, and the rest is now held on with clips. Alright, so next thing we need to do is remove this little tray here. And then we can start test fitting the new sub. Okay, got the tray out and just test fit the sub, but it bolts right up because it's already threaded, which is awesome. Looks really clean, and once the panel goes back, you really won't see anything at all. I will probably cut a little hole in this cover panel and then put a grill, speaker grill on it. All right, so as you can see here, I used a hammer just to bend this lip over, just so I could fit the amp in that location. Got my power wire run all the way to this point. Now, in addition, I got the ground all ready to go. And the way that I did that, there's actually threaded studs. One right there and one right there. As you can see, I cleaned the paint off really well with a wire brush, so there's no paint on it. And then I had a nut that would fit. So that's going to run all the way down along the line there as well. I did put a distribution block in, totally optional. But this blue cable came from the battery, and that blue cable will run to the amp for power. This side is just for ground, in case I want to add another amplifier or any other accessory later. So now at this point, power and ground are already run. Next step here is we need to run our RCAs from our Pioneer radio up front back to the amp, and run our speaker wire from our amp back up to the main harness, which leads to all the speakers in the car. Now, in case anybody was wondering how I'm going to run speaker wire in here, rather than run individual speaker wires to each individual speaker from the output on the amp, what I'm going to use is this 9-conductor cable. It's all your aftermarket colors, so 4 pairs or 8 wires, plus the 9 wire being the blue remote turn on wire. This allows me, as the speaker outputs on the amp, I hook these speaker wires up, double shielded cable. This one's about 20 feet long. Now at this point, I'm going to run my RCAs and my speaker wire from the amp to the front of the car. Now I'm running 2 pairs of RCAs. 1 pair will be for our sub, and 1 pair will be for our interior speakers. All right, so started running my wire. Here's my 9-conductor cable. The speaker outputs are on that side of the amp. RCAs are on this side of the amp, so here's the ends for my RCAs. So both pairs of RCAs and speaker wire run down here, and you can start clipping them in these factory clip areas all the way along here. Speaker wire RCAs, just kind of tucked it up underneath, and this is where it comes out at this point. Sorry, it's kind of dark. So we're gonna get it up and underneath the carpet, and then we're gonna work our way up into the center console. RCAs will plug into the radio outputs, and our speaker wire will plug into the main wiring harness for the car, which leads to the doors. All right, so I got the amp mounted. The 9-conductor wire is connected to the front bank of speaker outputs. My sub is connected to the second bank of outputs. Power and ground is hooked up. Got the RCAs hooked up for our signal source. Everything's mounted super tight, and that'll fit behind the panel, which is really cool. I'm going to take apart the dash bezel here so we can get behind the radio. Keep in mind, I'm not going to show that in this video. Go ahead and check out my first video, the radio install, where I show you how to take apart the dash bezel piece by piece to get behind the radio. All right, so I got the speaker wire. Remember, this is the output from the amplifier. And I got my one RCA and 2 RCA. This is from the radio to the amp to supply signal, so the amp knows what to play. So I fed these all the way up here, all the way from the back. Now, these wires go to the speakers in the car, and so we're just going to connect those together using butt connectors, crimp them, and clean up the wiring nice. All right, so I got that all connected. So output from the amp into the factory wiring of the car to the speakers. Matched all the colors up. That's the benefit of the 9-conductor cable. Everything else is hooked up from my previous video, so go ahead and check that out for the video the touchscreen Pioneer install. Here's our RCA cables, which will connect into our outputs on the back of the radio. All right, I have everything hooked up here, get the radio back in. We'll do a quick test here once we get it all put back together. Almost done. All right, got the dash all back together. Like it? Kind of a cool thing on the side here, I didn't necessarily show, but I did a bass knob. Universal bass knob, just right there in that pocket. If you want to know how to install a bass knob, I'll post also a link here in the video down in the description of how to do so. Pretty straightforward and simple, and I just put a little hole here and so I could tap into the RCAs for that bass knob. Just folds away. I went ahead and put the positive back on the battery and the power wire on that nice bolt. So all good to go, super clean. Last thing here we have to do is get this back panel all put back together. As you may have noticed, with this back panel and the previous tray that was in this back compartment, obviously it wouldn't fit with the new install that we did. So what we've done is we've just trimmed this all the way around to make sure that it clears. Previously, there used to be this piece of plastic there, and you can see how much I've had it cut away. All right, all back together. Takes some time and a little bit of care and effort, but everything went back to actually fit perfectly. I'll kind of give you an idea what this looks like. You can open up this panel, and there we are. Now eventually, like I said, with this panel, I'm going to cut a hole and put a speaker grill. If you have any questions about this install, just post a comment below. Appreciate you watching the channel, and we will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.